The internet, again, one of the biggest changes has been the internet. We were not aware of it, but the internet was put together around 1960 to link computers. But a computer in those days was $1 million invention. I mean, that covered the size of 3 or 4 classrooms. And it was expensive to operate. It had to have air conditioning. The parts had to be kept really cool. Had to have a team of technicians around to check it out regularly and replace the parts. The integrated circuit had not yet been invented, so all the parts were discrete. Memory was highly expensive. Those computers have since all gone by the wayside. But the internet links the computers of the world together into a world wide web. Well, yeah, I wrote down the word hippie. The young people of my generation who rebelled were called hippies, and they tended to be flower children, and they would refuse to take a bath, among other things. They got together at a big meeting in 1969. I'm trying to think of the name of the place. I can't think of the name of it, but they got together. It's the name of one of our towns right nearby here, but I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, they got together in a big, what's called Hippie Love In, a love fest. Anyway, science and technology. Your book talks about the space program. The space program is more and more becoming unmanned. Partly, again, just like the same thing about drones. Now, I used to read a lot of science fiction books when I was a kid, but what actually happened was nothing like we predicted. Nobody in the science fiction world predicted we'd go to the moon, make a few trips there, and then quit going. We just quit. Nobody predicted that. And nobody predicted that robots would go ahead of us to the planets. We have had robots land on asteroids, we've had robots land on the moon, robots have landed on Venus, and several have landed on Mars. And they're doing our exploring for us. They're much cheaper. We had a robot land on Saturn's moon Titan. And just sent back a few pictures. But these robots, and what I'm really anxious for is we have one now, satellite on its way to Pluto. It should arrive in July of next year, July 14th, 2015. What will they find when they get there? I pretty well can guess they'll probably find something that we did not expect. I don't know what they'll find, but it's been going there for years. We used to think we could never go to these far distant planets, but then we learned a technique that someone figured out 150 years ago of using the nearby planets as gravity assist. Particularly the planet Venus. Venus is fast and its gravity pulls on sort of. So you fly by Venus and get this gravity boost from planet Venus and use that. I mean, I think, well, if you're going to Saturn, why go to Venus first? You get speed, which you need to get to Saturn. But what they did, they particularly the Saturn rocket, it flew by Venus one time, got a big gravity boost, then it flew by Venus again on its return swing, like a yo-yo. Flew by and got another gravity boost, but that time it was getting near Earth and got another gravity boost from Earth, so we got 2 gravity boosts from Venus, 1 gravity boost from Earth, then went on to, then got another big gravity boost from Jupiter. Jupiter might be slow, but it's heavy. And that gives them the speed they need to get to the outer planets. That's every satellite we've sent beyond Jupiter has passed by Jupiter to get a gravity assist from Jupiter, including the one to Pluto. Again, have any of you heard of this from other sources? I was a space enthusiast as a youngster, and still am. Okay. NASA, or National Aeronautical Space Administration. All right, I'm going to skip the other part about fundamentalism, religion, because I just realized I'm running out of time fast. Well, I will say about religion. Religion in both Christianity and Islam is returning more and more to fundamentalism. They abandoned fundamentalism back when they thought, say, science has proven a lot of the Bible was wrong. That was their view. But then along came some creationist science and said, hey, you know, your science is wrong. All right, I'll comment about that a little bit. Science is not consensus. Science is observation, repeatability, and well, there's two types of science. There's the theoretical and there's the practical. The practical science is where you put together better objects. I mean, all right, this 3-year-old cell phone, I know it's hopelessly obsolete. You make better ones all the time. And every 2 or 3 months they come up with a new one and better one. That's practical science. But theoretical science is how did we come to be? How did the universe come to exist? And folk, all we can do is speculate. We weren't there. And it changes all the time. And every theory we have about the universe has some compelling reason why it cannot be true. And recently there was a debate between Ken Ham and Bill Nye. Did any of you happen to see it or know about it? One of you? Okay, yeah. Each of you can make up your mind for yourself what you think. I personally think that Ken Ham went easy on it. Every question Bill Nye raised, the creationists answered 1,000 more times over. Every issue he brought up.
Who was Bill Nye?
Bill Nye is the head of the Planetary Society, and he once was called, he's called Mr. Science Guy. He's not really a scientist, Bill Nye. Yeah. NYE. Yeah, NYE. He's not even a scientist, he only has a bachelor's degree, but he appeared on a TV show for kids where he tried to popularize science. Yeah, NYE. Bill Nye, the science guy. Well, he sees something, I want to say this about the debates too. He did what Bill Nye did not know. The other side gave up debating creationists a long time ago.
Well,
because they couldn't win. Why?
Who was the other guy, did you say?
Ken Ham.
Ken Ham?
Yeah, Ken Ham.
H-A-M?
H-A-M, yes. He's running a museum near Cincinnati, of which I once was a member of, and I have relatives near Cincinnati. And we've all been to the museum where he promotes creationism. And I will say that from a purely scientific point of view, Ken Ham's arguments really cannot be refuted. There's just, well, when you come right down to it, what do we know about the origin of life in the universe on Earth? It can be summed up in one word: nothing. What do we know about the universe beyond our own solar system? Again, it can be summed up in one word. And somebody pointed out that science is always changing. So the history of science is somebody came up one day and said, hey, you're all wrong, I'm right. And eventually people believed it. Well, it's time somebody would come and said, hey, you're wrong. And eventually he got believed. Somebody else came and said, you're wrong. I mean, talking about science, Ptolemy's science about the universe. Ptolemy explained the universe 2,300 years ago, and his science lasted for 1,800 years. And today it's considered all wrong. I mentioned Ptolemy once about his belief that the Earth was the center of the universe. His science lasted for 1,800 years. Yes?
So what exactly was Ken Ham's argument?
Okay, Ken Ham, mostly that Bill Nye answered the questions. Essentially, I mean, hey, you can go to Answers Genesis and get the debate downloaded for free. It lasts about 2 hours. But he said, one thing was, how could Noah have built the ark by himself? Well, Ken Ham's answer was, number one, we were not there. I don't know how he built it. Number two, there's nothing in the text that says he didn't have a whole lot of help. He could have hired help. Another argument is you could not have fit all the animals in the ark. Well, all right, true. If you would try to fit 2 beagles, 2 foxhounds, 2 terriers, 2, you don't have enough room. But if you just put 2 canines, and those 2 canines came the dog, the wolf, the dingo, the fox, you could have fit them. And if they were a feline, put 2 felines, those felines came I mean, even Ken Ham believes the lion, the tiger, the bobcat, and yes, even your house cat, all came from the same ancestors. You might say, isn't this evolution? No, it's simply recombining the same genes. Like I think I displayed with a deck of cards. You can draw a deck and get all 2s and 3s, you've got a poor hand. You can turn around and draw a deck and get all kings and queens and aces, you've got a good hand. They came from the same deck. But now if you draw from a bridge deck and draw an old maid card, then evolution has occurred. Why can't you draw an old maid card for bridge deck? Well, unless it was planted there. I mean, granted, the bridge deck contains bridge cards. So basically the feline deck contains only feline genes. The canine deck contains canine genes. The equine deck contains equine. So equines only produce equines, felines produce felines, canine produce. So given that, he could have gotten all the animals. He only needed about 4,000 pairs of animals on the ark. I mean, that was part of the debate. But one time they asked him a question that Bill Nye simply couldn't answer. What is the origin of consciousness? Bill Nye had to admit, we do not know the origin of consciousness, how conscious it may be. Ken Ham said, okay, and I know this is state school, but I got to tell you what he said. There's a book out there that will tell you how consciousness originated. Oh, you know what book I'm talking about, I guess. He told, there's a book out there that will tell you. All right. Anyway, this is a return to somewhat fundamentalism about Europeans. Europe's in the post-Christian era. The average European, he said, goes to church 3 times in his life, wants to be baptized when he's born, wants to get married, and then he's carried there when he dies. All right, I got to move on. I'm running out of time. Middle East, Africa and Middle East. All right, Africa, essentially, folk, what I wanted to say about Africa is, in the 1960s, they began to get their independence as more and more European countries said, we are no longer going to be your overlords, and they turned them loose. And African countries, the first thing they would do is try to develop a socialistic state that would collapse. And they went from one dictatorship to another. This person would lead for a while and he'd collapse, and that person would lead for a while and he'd collapse. One coup after another would take over. They have simply not been able to do a lot to get, you might say, get nationhood started. Now, that's sad because Africa has by far out and away the most resources of any continent on earth. They have a lot of coal, a lot of tin, a lot of iron, and a lot of diamonds and a lot of gold. If they could somehow get together and cooperate with each other, but that's been a problem they've had. Now, I mean, hey, I was a kid, when I was a kid in 1959, I was sitting in church and a preacher came in and said, now they promised Belgium its independence in 1960. And it's going to be interesting because I don't think the people of Belgium are ready for it. And they said, here's the case. One man was carrying around an empty suitcase. And they said, what are you carrying around this empty suitcase for? Well, he said, Belgium has promised me freedom next year, and when they give it to me, I want to be able to carry around a lot of it. Again, folk, with people like that, what do you expect from them? But anyway, the communists would come in and promise, hey, we can help you. And the United States would try to their best to try to keep the communists out. Your book goes through one nation after another. A few nations I really want to emphasize, particularly South Africa and apartheid. South Africa was taken over by the whites many years ago, and they were the last country on earth to officially end apartheid. Apartheid means white supremacy, and the blacks are second-class citizens. They finally, around 1990, ended the policy of apartheid. Nelson Mandela became the president, and of course, maybe you know, Nelson Mandela made big news recently. He died just a short time ago, but he lived a long time. He lived for many years in an African prison. He was a close friend of Dr. Martin Luther King. All right, I'll tell you what.